As I mentioned at the top of the show today, Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill, as he calls it, faced a big, brutal setback in the House today. The Republican-led Budget Committee failed to pass the package when 5 of their own members voted against it. I mentioned how it was really 4, 1 for a procedural reason. But that aside, the committee is now scheduled to meet again on Sunday to try to figure out what the heck to do next. Now, it's welcome news that Trump's resolution hit a snag. After all, this is a bill that extends tax cuts for rich people and pays for them by cutting critical programs like Medicaid and SNAP. But that's not what concerned these Republicans who voted against it. Their concern was that they aren't cutting enough. And considering the damage this bill could already do, it could actually get worse if these hardliners get their way. I mean, in just the cuts to Medicaid in the current version, millions of Americans will lose coverage. And entire hospitals, particularly in rural areas, could be forced to shut down, which basically means that entire communities, whether they use Medicaid or not, could lose access to health care. And during that hearing in the Budget Committee today, the ranking Democrat on the committee, Congressman Brendan Boyle, put things very plainly.
This is the overarching truth. It is the biggest tax cuts for billionaires in American history, paid for by throwing 13.7 million Americans off their health care coverage. Now, those aren't my claims. That is not subjective. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office just this week confirmed that at least 13,700,000 Americans will lose their health care if the GOP bill for billionaires becomes law.
And joining me now is the ranking Democrat who just saw there on the House Budget Committee, Congressman Brendan Boyle of Pennsylvania. Congressman, I know you've had a long day. Thank you for staying up and coming on with me. Nobody knows more than you do about the status of this bill. So let me start by asking you, I mean, there seem to be basically 3 negotiating parties: hardline Republicans, Democrats, and other Republicans. Democrats are pretty united here. The Republicans...
What's so funny?
Bro!
I started the show talking about this, but you know this way better than I do. There's those who think there should be more cuts. There are those who are concerned by the cuts. What are they trying to decide among themselves right now?
Yeah, great to be with you, Jen. And I actually opened my remarks this morning at 9 a.m. by saying that today in the Budget Committee, we would hear a vigorous debate between Republicans and some other Republicans. That vigorous debate combined with a completely unified Democratic opposition, which I don't think we can overlook, the fact that we Democrats were 100% unified meant that Republicans needed almost a totally unanimous front themselves. They didn't have it, and therefore we were able to block the big Republican bill for billionaires. Now, the next step on this is that Speaker Johnson has ordered the Budget Committee to come back and work at this again Sunday at 10 p.m., just in time for primetime viewing on MSNBC. The Budget Committee will be back. And so Speaker Johnson is hoping that in these 48 hours or so, they're able to finally come up with a way to assuage their most hardline Freedom Caucus members who want to see even more than 13.7 million Americans lose their health care. But as you pointed out, and my final point on this, every further thing that Mike Johnson gives to the Freedom Caucus means their problem actually gets more difficult with their so-called moderate Republican members. By the way, both groups, both the Freedom Caucus member Republicans and the so-called moderate Republicans, both are large enough to actually sink this bill on the House floor.
It's a seesaw of sorts. I wanted to take the moment, since you are here with me, just to talk about some of the terms here. A lot of people are very familiar with, but we're going to hear more of them, and you can explain them very well. So Republicans have said that their plan to install work requirements for Medicaid recipients would make sure that, quote, this is the term they use, able-bodied people would not be draining funds. Yeah. And if you just hear that term, it sounds not bad. I mean, what does able-bodied mean? But talk to me about what that talking point is actually really about.
Yeah, Republicans kind of gave the game away today in the Budget Committee because, you know, the statistic that was confirmed this week by Congressional Budget Office that 13.7 million of our fellow Americans would lose their health care is truly shocking. To put this in perspective, There is no previous law or event in American history, not even the Great Depression, forced more than 13 million Americans to lose their health care. So that is the scale of this. So the way the Republicans rhetorically are getting around that is say, oh, no real Americans, no able-bodied Americans who are working would lose their Medicaid or their health care. It's just two groups, illegal immigrants and those who are defrauding the system. That is the sort of BS that they are with a straight face attempting to peddle. In terms of able-bodied, what they mean essentially are work requirements. Well, let me say, I'm a Democrat who is proudly for work. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Philadelphia in a very working-class household where I had two parents who both worked a lot of hours. My dad more than 60 hours a week most times just to be able to provide for us. So, of course, we Democrats stand for working people. What they really want to do, what the Republicans are attempting to do, is what the state of Arkansas did a few years ago and put in such onerous requirements of paperwork that they actually prevent those people who legitimately and lawfully qualify for Medicaid, who most of the time are working full time, but prevent them from actually getting the benefits that they qualify for. That is what Republicans are doing in this bill.
Thank you for that explanation. I think it's very helpful. Let me ask you about, one of the things that was striking today, or you heard this criticism from some Republicans, that Trump wasn't super engaged, or he could have used more of his leverage, I guess, to move this across the finish line. Do you think that's, he didn't do a lot, it seems, publicly, but do you think that's true? Would that have changed the outcome on the Budget Committee vote today?
Well, to be fair, Donald Trump was very busy collecting bribes, essentially, in the Middle East. So he had his own agenda at the moment. And, frankly, I think it's safe to say Donald Trump is not exactly a policy guy or an in-the-weeds sort of guy. But the reality is Mike Johnson's whole speakership rests on the support of Donald Trump. I've had House Republicans flat out tell me that one tweet from Donald Trump pulling his support for Mike Johnson would be the end of Mike Johnson's speakership. So we all know here that even if we Democrats were to do on any issue some sort of agreement with Mike Johnson, he can't actually make it happen. He can't actually deliver the Republican votes on the other side. It is their dear leader, which is Donald Trump. So I think for Republicans to ultimately be able to get this passed, I do believe it'll actually take Donald Trump doing what he has done in the past on a few different bills, which is, and I'm not exaggerating, literally calling the cell phone numbers of individual House Republicans while they're on the House floor, pulling them into the Republican members' cloakroom and screaming at them and cursing at them so loud that other members nearby can hear his end of the conversation.
We may see that happen. It may be required. Congressman Brendan Boyle, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.